Hello again, everyone. My name is Dave Weber, and I would like to talk to you today about many of the issues that we're confronted with today as a country. First of all, I waited to do this till later in the day because out of respect for the victims and the families of the victims, the Roseburg, Oregon shooting on the community college campus. Another horrific event. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes in terms of gun control and those kind of things. But today I wanted to address a few issues, leading off with the fact that people think because I am unknown, a non-politician, I've never held a political office, that I am being thrown to the wolves, or I would throw myself to the wolves, we'll say, so to speak, if I ran for president. Well, let me just say this. There's a saying, is throw me to the wolves and I will return leading the pack. I truly believe that I can handle anything they throw at me and hold my own in debates with any of the candidates, Democratic or Republican. People say, you're going to be over your head. Well, doesn't our government appear to be over its head most of the time? We truly need change. Big change. Change in the form of the way we govern, because we simply aren't effective. Now, what about some of the issues? What about my feelings about some of the issues and ideas? I do have a few, and I'd like to share some with you as briefly as possible today. First, let's start with everybody's favorite, jobs and the economy. One of the issues that I like to look at, and one of the numbers I look at, is the unemployment rate, which today was reported at 5.1%, the lowest level in 7 years. But what is not taken into consideration is the 1.8 million people that are not in the labor force that want work, but they're not counted in the unemployment numbers because they haven't sought work in 4 weeks or more. Now, that's a skewed number, that 5.1%, because you got almost 2 million people who stopped looking. They gave up. That's sad. Wages only increased year over year by 2.2% as of 9/30. That's way below the projected 3.5% that they wanted, and certainly the recession rate is much higher than that. So while the numbers look good, there are serious problems with the jobs being created. Only 141,000 new jobs in September, way below what they were hoping. And what kind of jobs were they? Still, we don't know. They probably don't know. They being Washington. So what are some of the things we can do about it? Well, we all know, and this ties right in with another subject, the infrastructure in this country is old and it needs work. Our bridges, our roads, our highways, everything like that. Our water systems, our water pipes, the sewer systems. Water lines are freezing in the Northeast every winter. I'm a volunteer for the American Red Cross. We had to open a shelter in central New York where we had to prepare for up to 30 to 40 families whose pipes froze and broke in the middle of the winter. This is due to old infrastructure. What can we do about it? Well, we can create jobs for many of the long-term unemployed by hiring them to help us work and to repair the infrastructure. The government comes up with grant money all the time to give to the local communities, and the perfect people to hire would be the long-term unemployed. And then what about our 51,000 homeless veterans, not to mention the veterans who are not working besides being homeless? What about them? They have skills. Many of them have more skills than our current labor force. Why don't we tap into that? They would love to have a job and working on the infrastructure in this country, and they could actually feel like they're doing something and making money. So we accomplish two things. We put people to work, and we get the infrastructure worked on. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of problems with our bridges, not only the water mains. I mean, how would you like to be in the middle of the winter trying to get down in underground and repairing a water main break? I mean, it's just gone too far, gone too long. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about taxes. Okay, the income tax, the IRS. Personally, I believe the IRS needs to be either revamped or just closed down. Something has to be done. The income tax law in this country, the Internal Revenue Service, is way too complicated. It has way too many loopholes for all the people, the 1%, who are the wealthiest people, in the country. And they're the wealthiest because they have these loopholes, and they can also have offshore bank accounts that cannot be touched. They don't have to pay tax on that money. This is wrong. It's simply wrong. The government needs to close the loopholes so that these people are paying their fair share of income tax. You're talking about a country at a deficit. You're talking about a middle class that's shrinking. I favor a little bit something closer to a flat tax. And there's another problem out there with Social Security being funded. The current Social Security tax is 6.2%, but only up to someone making $118,500. Above that, there's no Social Security tax. That doesn't make any sense to me. I suggest we raise that maximum to $250,000, creating a ton of revenue for the Social Security program right off the bat. You have a lot more people paying in. Let's talk about immigration. I know I'm going over these quickly, but I'm just giving you some quick ideas because you won't want to listen to this much longer if I really get into it. We are a country of immigrants. So for Donald Trump to say he's going to deport 11.2 million illegal immigrants the first day in office is not only wrong, but it's not possible. It's pie in the sky. It cannot be done quite that easily. I will agree with him in that we need to strengthen our borders and protect the borders better. Whether building a wall is the answer, he's a self-confirmed billionaire. Why doesn't he pay for the wall? He says Mexico will pay for it. Mexico won't pay for it. Who's Donald Trump to get Mexico to pay for anything? So there's a lot there open for discussion, but he's not right now not worth my time. Immigration is an issue. The first thing we need to do is to protect and secure the borders better. And you know what? We got military people coming back who would love those kind of jobs too. That's their specialty. Put them on the borders. You got people on the borders now who don't know what they're doing. That's one way of really amping up the security on the borders, is to hire former military and let them handle a lot of that. There's other ideas I have, but I'm going to move on. The refugee situation from Syria. We are humanitarian. We're humanitarian people. There is one agency, a non-profit agency in the United States that is chartered by the federal government, only one, and that is the American Red Cross, which I am proud to say I am a volunteer with. The American Red Cross can provide a lot of help for the government, for the people, for the states and cities who wish to receive refugees, and helping them to show them how to shelter them temporarily at least, and feed them. It's what the Red Cross does. So why have the government try to do something that they cannot do? They don't know how to do anything. Let them empower the Red Cross to do this. That's what the Red Cross, like I said, that's what we do. Okay? As far as actually bringing in the refugees, I'm not 100% in favor of it. However, I don't want America to appear to be a country that is not humanitarian, like many of the countries who just refuse to take any. Japan won't take any. They're offering money, but the United States is saying that maybe they'll take 100,000, 200,000. I don't know what the number is going to be. Okay, I don't even think we know. The United States knows. If we do that, we better darn be ready to take care of our 51,000 homeless veterans first. And I'm telling you, that needs to be done. And if we know how to track illegal immigrants, and if we're willing to take in refugees from Syria, which I understand, these people are fleeing for their lives, well, we better darn be ready to take care of our own veterans. That's shameful and absolutely must be done immediately. Donald Trump could afford to build buildings to house all of them. So my point is that you can talk the talk, but you better be ready to walk the walk. Okay? And this country does a lot of talking. Let's start walking. Okay? Climate change is a real thing. You can say it's not, but it is. It's evidenced by the kind of weather and violent weather we've had over the last 3 or 4 years. We need to pay attention to that. We need to pay attention to the little things we can do about it, such as restricting and tougher EPA standards and new vehicles being built. And we need to ramp up that. We don't need to give them 10 years to comply. These auto manufacturers are making tons of money. Let them spend a little bit toward helping. So climate change is real. Please don't think it's not. People say, well, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll be dead and gone. Well, you know, we need to worry about our children, our grandchildren, and our grandchildren's children too. And it is a real issue that we could start doing something about right away. Talking about climate change, you can get rid of another fact, and that's energy and the cost of energy. Solar energy is something that's becoming much more popular, and I believe in the next 5 to 10 years it will become increasingly popular, to the tune of perhaps 500,000 homes being solar heated, solar powered. So it is an alternative energy that warrants looking at. Cost wise versus savings, I don't know. The cost just has to come down, but the more use it gets, the less cost it'll be. And statistics say you can save up to 80% of your utility bills. Now, is it worth it to the everyday homeowner? Maybe not. But perhaps companies, manufacturing companies, larger companies can start, and we can go from there. The one thing that we need to look at is renewable energy sources other than oil. Now, I'm really not in favor of the pipeline, the Alaskan pipeline. You know, history has shown, look at the oil spills we've had just from tankers in the ocean. Can you imagine a pipeline of that magnitude? How many times or how much of a leak that could happen? And environmentally it would be a nightmare, not to mention the cost of the oil you lose plus repairing the pipeline. So I really don't think that's a way to go. We need to get away from oil and look for renewable sources of energy and much more natural gas and things like that. And you know, I believe that by the end of the first term of the next president, every household in America could have renewable energy as it's a source of heat and power. So we need to start thinking outside the box a little bit. It's not something our government is very good at, but that's why change is needed. Another thing I want to talk about is, you talk about changes in Washington. We absolutely need to pass legislation for term limits in Congress. Now, that's not going to be very popular because most of the congressmen are making it a career. But it was never meant to be a career. It's meant to be public service, and you do it for a term or two, and then you go on to what you were doing before, perhaps. But it's not meant to be a 30-year career. I'm not saying that it's bad that we have experienced people in Congress. That's good. But we have a lot of talent out there that has maybe better ideas and ideas that can move us forward rather than stuck in the mud like we are. So term limits in Congress, I think, are essential. 2 terms maximum for any congressman, any senator, or House of Representative. Now let's talk about everybody's favorite, gun control. It was a terrible tragedy what happened yesterday in Roseburg, Oregon. These things continue to happen. Like President Obama said, it's become almost commonplace. It has become commonplace. It's the new normal, which is very, very sick. And the sickness is what the problem is. People say we need better gun control. The only kind of gun control, perhaps, and I say perhaps, we need is the multiple magazines, the magazines that can shoot 30 bullets at a time. The everyday citizen, do you really need to shoot 30 rounds at once? So I question that. But the NRA, of course, is a very powerful tool, or very powerful agency, I should say. And to try to fight them and get a bill passed, it'll never happen. So what we need to do is pass some sort of legislation that we can pass. And I believe what we need to look at is who is buying these guns that are doing these killings. Now, criminals are always going to find guns. People that are shooting each other in the streets over drugs and things like that, they're always going to find a gun, no matter how many gun control laws you pass. The Second Amendment is a very important amendment to the Constitution. I know the NRA says it all the time, and they're right. We don't want to change the amendment. Perhaps we could amend it a little bit or add something to it about the multiple magazines, but that's, I think, down the road. We need to have better control over who is buying guns. Background checks, control on the gun owners, the gun ownership shops, the places that are selling the guns. What about this guy who did the shootings yesterday? He had 13 guns. 13 that were bought within the last 3 years by either he, himself, or a member of his family. Now you're trying to tell me that we don't have a way of tracking the fact that somebody's buying 13 guns? Shouldn't that shoot a red flag off where we can investigate this person? And he obviously was suffering from mental illness. And that seems to be the common denominator for all these massacres, or people who are shooting all these people in movie theaters and college campuses and even in a federal building in Maryland. My God, they're obviously mentally ill people. Maybe they've already received treatment, maybe they need treatment. What difference does it make? We have to not sell them guns. There has to be a way to do it. You can't tell me with the computer systems that we have in this country that there isn't a better way to do this. We have to. We simply must. And to me, that's the quickest way to go, to legislation-wise, to get it passed through this bipartisan Congress that we have, to do something about the killings. We have to do something about this. President Obama was right to be angry yesterday. Perhaps he could have saved that for a few days afterwards, but you can't blame the guy. This is wrong. What's happening? We have to do something about it. And now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. Congress has to act. And you can't tell me we cannot do something about selling guns to people who have a history of mental illness. Or if somebody buys more than 2 or 3 guns, it should be flagged somehow. And it should pop out of somebody's computer and say, wait, what's going on here? The other thing about it is the people who knew that this guy, they sent emails out, his mother knew, apparently. More investigation obviously needs to be done, but the fact is that in most of these cases, someone knew this person was mentally ill. There should be some accountability for these people not coming forward and telling somebody. And if they did tell somebody, then the accountability has to fall on who they told and why something wasn't done about it. So there's a lot of work to be done before we worry about trying to limit guns. Guns really aren't the problem 100%. Okay? Maybe a small part of the problem. But if we can fix the people who are buying them, then that will solve most of the problem in these types of shootings. You're never going to solve the murders on the street, the gun violence, the drugs and all that stuff. You're not going to do much about that. That's going to happen because criminals are going to get guns. They're going to get guns. And maybe the mentally unstable will, but I'll tell you what, if we trace back these guns to who they bought them from and they didn't do a proper check, then that person needs to go to jail. That's the way it should be. I want to finish by saying, this is a great country. We need strong leadership. President Obama has done some good things in his term, but it's ending. He was left with, to say it mildly, a mess. We do not need another Republican presidential administration. We need a Democratic one. We have good candidates. We have Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, both of whom are good people, I believe. They've got very solid backgrounds. I'm a nobody to the system, but I know what I'm doing, I think. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not stupid. And I have got the guts and the intelligence and the heart and the passion to do something about it. That's the only reason I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because I'm a glutton for punishment or I'd like to be thrown to the wolves, as I said at the beginning. I'm doing this because I love America and I want to do something about the problems. And I can't sit back and wait for these senators and congressmen who are running for office and former congressmen or all former lawyers. They don't believe in doing anything today. They're okay with doing it next year, next month. No, that's not good enough for me. So I'm serious about this effort to get noticed, an effort to get interviewed, an effort to get the Democrats to listen to me. We need a non-politician in the Democratic Party who can stand up there and debate with the others, and I would like to be that person. So if you're listening to this and I've hit a couple of nerves and I've made some sense to you, I would appreciate your support. I'm not rich like the three Republican non-politicians. That doesn't matter to me. I've already said I'm going to donate my entire salary to the issues that need to be resolved. Okay? Probably the other politicians who hear this will say the same thing. Well, will they or won't they? I don't know. I mean, they're very good at hiding their money anyway. I don't have that much to hide. My wife and I are comfortable, but I'm doing this because of passion and because of my heart. And because I believe God says I need to try to do something. I lay awake at night because if I can't do something to help, then I'm part of the problem. That's the way I feel. So, thank you for listening. I'm sorry this went a little longer than the last video that I did, but I felt it necessary to say a few things so you knew where I stood on certain issues. And I want to move forward with this campaign. And I'm looking for all the support and help I can get. And I thank every single one of you. And again, God bless America.